This video is brought to you by Patreon. Patreon. 3, 2, 1, blast off. 1991. The United States begins and ends Operation Desert Storm in response to the Iraq invasion of Kuwait, resulting in sanctions that would see further military action throughout the 1990s. The Soviet Union is formally dissolved, officially ending the Cold War. Video footage of 4 police officers senselessly beating Rodney King in Los Angeles is released. Serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer is arrested. Basketball star Magic Johnson informs the world of his HIV diagnosis, and Freddie Mercury dies of AIDS. The World Wide Web is released to the general public, giving many people their first taste of the internet. Apple releases their PowerBook line of laptops, and the first version of the Linux operating system is released. In movie theaters, we have Terminator 2: Judgment Day, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and Silence of the Lambs for the teenagers, and for the kids, Hook, The Addams Family, and Beauty and the Beast, the first animated film to be nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. In music, Nirvana hits the scene hard with their album Nevermind, and its hit single, Smells Like Teen Spirit. It was also the year of Enter Sandman by Metallica, Black or White by Michael Jackson, and Tupac Shakur's first solo album, Tupacalypse Now. The first Lollapalooza tour is launched, and Whitney Houston sets the gold standard for singing the Star-Spangled Banner at the Super Bowl. The Super Nintendo is released in North America, introducing us to Mode 7 and Mario's new best friend Yoshi. Sega, in turn, gives us Sonic the Hedgehog, which becomes the first major video game character to rival Mario's dominance. But my personal favorite video game character introduced this year is my girl Chun-Li, as Street Fighter II hits the arcades. Also, Battletoads, Lemmings, and the Simpsons arcade beat-em-up. And we see the births of Ed Sheeran, Tyler the Creator, and Jamie Lynn Spears. On television, Adam Sandler and Tim Meadows joins the cast of Saturday Night Live, LA Law features the first lesbian kiss on American television, and Leonardo DiCaprio joins the cast of Growing Pains. Viacom's Ha and HBO's Comedy Channel merge to become Comedy Central, and Turner Broadcasting purchases the animation library of Hanna-Barbera for $320 million. Jim Henson Productions brings Disney's prehistoric family sitcom Dinosaurs to life. Tim Allen becomes a household name with Home Improvement, and MTV premieres their animation showcase Liquid Television, introducing the world to Aeon Flux. In the world of children's television, Darkwing Duck joins the Disney afternoon, PBS premieres its first game show, Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, and the Tasmanian Devil gets his own show with Tasmania. Plus, Back to the Future, the animated series, Toxic Crusaders, The Pirates of Darkwater, Little Dracula, Bucky O'Hare and the Toad Wars, Yo Yogi, Pro Stars, Hammerman, and James Bond Jr. As for Nickelodeon, well, this is 1991. There has never been a bigger, more defining year for a cable channel than Nickelodeon in 1991. Live-action production was in full swing at Nickelodeon Studios at Universal Studios Florida, and after years of development, the channel finally premiered its first 3, if you don't count Count Duckula, animated shows, the much-beloved Nicktoons. If you count Salute Your Shorts going from pilot to series on July 4th, the return of Danger Mouse after a 4-year absence on September 30th, and the first 3 seasons of Lassie getting spun off into a separate program called Jeff's Collie on October 1st, Nickelodeon added 18 new shows into the lineup this year, consisting of 11 original shows, 6 imports, and 1 import turned original, plus the first Pete and Pete specials and the pilot of Are You Afraid of the Dark. That's a lot of television, and a lot of it was gold. Of course, to make room for all that, some shows had to go. The Nickelodeon Studios promoting variety show Outta Here was Outta There on January 4th. Charming Canadian preschooler show Today Special ended its 9-year run on the channel on April 30th. Teen talk show Don't Just Sit There was dropped on May 25th. The French animated fantasy adventure Spartacus and the Sun Beneath the Sea aired its last on July 28th. Skateboarding hobbyist program Skate TV left on September 28th. The first run of Cartoon Kablooey ended on September 29th, and 2 of the channel's game shows, Think Fast and Make the Grade, were dropped on June 29th and December 29th respectively. But that's still almost a 2-to-1 ratio of new programming to old discarded programming, meaning the channel was bursting at the seams with content. But before we get into that, let's go over to the Nick at Night corner and see what they were up to in 1991. Turns out, quite a bit. A lot of shows rotating in and out. On January 4th, we got Dragnet, the original propaganda hit. On January 14th, they added spy spoof Get Smart, starring Inspector Gadget's own Don Adams. This was a personal favorite of mine as a kid, and a personal favorite of the channel, who would have a week-long Get Smart marathon from March 18th to March 24th. Make Room for Daddy left the late night channel on January 27th, and On the Television was gone on February 24th. In 1991, we had count 'em, three crossover shows between Nick at Night and daytime Nickelodeon. The first would come on March 4th with Mork and Mindy, the wacky alien sitcom that put Robin Williams on the map. On July 21st, a rare Nick at Night original, Hi Honey I'm Home, a show about 50 sitcom characters moving to a modern suburb. I get a lot of requests to cover this show, and good news, if we reach $1,000 a video on my Patreon, I'll start a Nick at Night spin-off series. The Best of Saturday Night Live left the channel on August 17th, though it would return for a 3-hour marathon on December 1st. And Bewitched left on August 31st with its own 4-hour going-away marathon. There was a one-off airing of both the Sonny and Cher Comedy Hour and the Brady Bunch Variety Hour on September 1st, and the second daytime Nick crossover show, The Adventures of Superman, premiered on September 20th. On September 30th, The Dick Van Dyke Show was added, and over the years would gradually replace The Donna Reed Show as Nick at Night's flagship program. F Troop, the third crossover show, premiered on October 5th, and My Three Sons was dropped from the channel on October 30th. And that is your Nick at Night corner for 1991. So yeah, a lot of shows coming in and a lot of shows going out. So much so that the Nickelodeon of January 1st, 1991 and the Nickelodeon of December 31st, 1991 may as well have been different channels. We've got a lot to cover here, including some era-defining programming. But before we get to that, we should cover some of the stuff that didn't quite have the impact of a Clarissa Explains It All or a Ren and Stimpy. So to kick off 1991, we're waking up bright and early for Nickelodeon's newest entry in the Cable in the Classroom program. This is Launchbox.
Hi, I'm Mike Hines, and welcome to the 7-minute teachers portion of Launchbox, which will be followed immediately by the 20-minute students portion. Today we'll be covering the development of the spacesuit. I hope you're taping the show because we've got a lot of ground to cover, and we'll be moving rather quickly. Don't worry, you can always go back later and spend as much time as you need. Ready?
Premiering on May 9th, 1991, Launchbox is a collection of 9 half-hour specials, each one focusing on a different aspect of outer space or space travel, with a wide variety of tones and styles between episodes, and sometimes within an episode. Being a Cable to Classroom program, each episode ended with a segment for teachers, suggesting different ways the episode could be incorporated into lesson plans, and fast-moving text that teachers were meant to pause on their VCR and take notes from.
Please keep in mind that you will need to individualize the following to meet the needs of your grade, assignment, time, purpose, and necessary materials. Before viewing, lead a discussion on the requirements for careers in space exploration, emphasizing the complex operations requiring training and cooperation.
Of the 9 episodes, I have 6 in my possession, after some digging and a very generous donation, and we have good ideas about the other 3 episodes thanks to TV listings. So, since there's so few episodes, let's just go through the entire show. I'm going to present these episodes in order of first broadcast. Some places like Wikipedia give the episodes in a different order. Episode 1, The Spectacular Spacesuit. Bruce Klassen of Nickelodeon's Outta Here walks us through the history of the American spacesuits, followed by a demonstration by Brad Prouty, an engineer for Hamilton Standard, a company that helped design the original Apollo spacesuits.
The suit is designed to withstand temperatures from minus 250 degrees Fahrenheit up to 250 degrees plus.
All right, we're going to put it to the ultimate test. Now, guys, remember, please, this is very sophisticated equipment, so please don't try this at home with your mother's working gloves or whatever you're using. All right, just to prove just how hot it is, here we go. Let's get a little flash here. Very hot. Go ahead, stick your hand in there. All right, go ahead. Did you feel anything?
No.
How about you? Did you feel anything? No heat or anything?
Nothing.
And yes, this is the same set as Get the Picture. Episode 2, Living on the Space Shuttle, is our first missing episode. It looked at the everyday life of astronauts in orbit, including the special food they eat and the effects of weightlessness. Episode 3, Space Training, takes a look at space camp at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, exploring the ways astronauts train for missions. And Bruce interviews with Utah Senator Jake Garn, who, on April 1985, flew aboard the Space Shuttle Discovery as a payload specialist.
What was the toughest thing you ever did in space?
The toughest thing I ever did in space was to have to come back from space. Not one person in the crew wanted to come back to Earth. We all wanted to stay there.
That'd be cool. I would love to do that sometime.
There was also a scripted game show segment called Slime Time, quite possibly the first time that name was used for Nickelodeon. A couple of missing episodes next. Episode 4, Space Station, focuses on the possibility of a long-term American orbiting space station to rival Russia's Mir, this episode coming out years before the International Space Station was finished. Episode 5, The Living Earth, demonstrates how satellites are used to monitor the planet, and how to create a self-sustaining environment in a bottle. Episode 6, Fantastic Forces, is hosted by Robin Morella on the set of Double Dare, and I'm pretty sure she talks more here than all the episodes of Double Dare combined.
Welcome to Launchbox. This is a show that brings space down to Earth just for kids, and we're bringing it right into your classroom. Today's show is about forces. How do objects move on Earth? How do objects move in space? Who is this Newton guy anyway? Well, we're going to try to answer some of these questions for you.
This includes an interview with Bob Seek, the launch director of the Space Shuttle program.
Okay, let's talk about gravity. Now, why should the term microgravity be used instead of zero gravity?
Well, microgravity is a term we use in Earth orbit because if there is something in Earth orbit, it's still being attracted to the center of the Earth because of the gravity.
Now, I was really excited when this episode fell into my lap, as TV listings mentioned an appearance from Ren and Stimpy demonstrating Newton's laws of physics. Oh boy, a rare Ren and Stimpy cartoon. Either someone in the TV guide offices got their wires crossed, or there was a second version of this episode featuring the cartoon. In my copy, we're instead given the laws by a kid in a locker room, with some very basic animation for demonstration.
The first half of the law states that a body at rest will stay at rest unless an outside force starts it moving. The second half of the law states that a body in motion will stay in motion in the same direction unless acted upon by an outside force. This is also called the law of inertia, or resistance to change.
I wouldn't be surprised if this was a placeholder because John Kay couldn't get the animation done on time again, but I've got no evidence of that. Episode 7, The Outer Planets, sees Nick Arcade host Phil Moore in front of a blue screen, bringing maybe a little too much energy into talking about Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, and the Voyager space probes.
Hi, Mom. Look, here I am. Doot, doot, doot. This is planet Earth. Yeah, this is a big planet. Jupiter is about 11 times larger than Earth. Look, it shrunk down to the teeny-weeny. I pinch you, Earth. Take a look at this giant hurricane. Oh, Annie M! It's the Great Red Spot. And it is so incredibly big that you could actually put 3 planet Earths inside of it. Imagine 3 Earths inside of this thing. Jupiter has at least 16 moons. 2 of them are larger than the planet Mercury. It's like everything out here is big.
Well, he's clearly having fun. Episode 8, Flight, focuses on the physics of aircraft, which is a little close to home for a space show, but okay. This is the biggest outlier of the series, and it's weird. We tap into a cable network called the Flight Channel, and its main shopping program, Candy's Corner, where Candy is selling a book by a con man about how he learned to fly Superman style, until a viewer rushes the stage and explains the principles of lift.
The wing of the plane is like curved on the top but flat on the bottom, so that the air moving across the top has to travel further and faster to get behind the wing than the air moving underneath. And just like the people at the mall, the faster moving air molecules make less pressure above the wing than below it.
Then there's an interview show where a guy talks to the world's worst stunt pilot and chastises him about safety in different weather conditions.
Now earlier you had said something about wind shear. Are you trying to tell me that you survived a microburst?
A micro what?
A microburst. It's a sudden downshift of air that radiates outward as it rushes to the ground. You see, wind shear is really just a generic term for any rapidly changing wind current.
When are we going to get back to space? Finally, episode 9, The Inner Planets. This one's wild. Jason Zimbler of Clarissa Explains It All gives us trivia on Mercury, Venus, Earth's moon, and Mars. And then we watch a Star Trek parody starring the cast of Welcome Freshmen and Phil Moore, with plots utilizing the trivia we've just learned.
The probe says it needs more data.
Okay, what does it want?
Venus's temperature, sir.
Use the sensors.
We can't, sir. They're dead.
Great. Anyone got a thermometer?
I've got an idea, Captain. Why don't we just tune into the Weather Channel?
Make it so.
Sorry, folks, it's another cloudy day with humidity at 0%. A real scorcher out there, the temperature a steady 900 degrees.
900 degrees?
In this episode, we also see one of the benefits of Nickelodeon's partnership with Universal, because they just plop the entire Back to the Future theme onto the soundtrack and expect us not to notice.
La Fridge, we're going to Mars. Hang on, Captain, we're on our way.
We're lucky we just missed that volcano, but I can't maintain this altitude much longer.
We can only get another couple of miles of altitude.
And that's Launchbox. A very simple program, but one that's kind of been hidden away with time. Being a cable in the classroom joint meant A, it aired very early in the morning, around 5:30, 6 a.m., a time when almost no children are watching television, and B, it was clearly something for school, so ignore it and go eat some Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Every school is different, but cable in the classroom tapes don't tend to survive once they're no longer needed for class curriculum. Compounding the issue is that while Launchbox aired for a very long stretch of time, all the way up to September 1st, 2000, broadcasts were pretty sporadic. What day of the week it aired changed a lot, and there were stretches of multiple months where it didn't air at all. And there was a huge chunk of time between new episodes. Only 3 new episodes aired in 1991, 3 in 1992, only 1 new episode in 1993, and 2 in 1994. So Launchbox was a challenging show to watch as a show, and as such a lot of it's been lost media for some time. I'm confident the episodes are in an archive somewhere, but with a good chunk of the information being outdated and low nostalgic interest since very few people actually watched it, I can't imagine them putting the episodes up on Paramount Plus anytime soon. But it's not hard to imagine why this show would have had appeal to the heads of Nickelodeon back in 1991. Outer space is only second to dinosaurs in terms of educational topics that make children's eyes light up. You don't have to worry about regaining your green vegetable reputation when you make it about astronauts. And resources were readily available. The newly opened Nickelodeon Studios was only an hour's drive away from the Kennedy Space Center, so you could bring in a lot of NASA personnel, demonstrate real equipment, and do some location shooting. In fact, Launchbox was a full co-production between Nickelodeon, the Astronauts Memorial Foundation, and NASA. And it might be more accurate to say that this show was made for NASA's benefit, not Nickelodeon's. The National Aeronautics and Space Administration wasn't having the best time going into the 1990s. While the Apollo 11 moon landing on July 16, 1969 was considered the height of human engineering achievement, it effectively ended the space race. The Cold War political motivations for a space program dried up, public interest dropped off, and it was frankly too expensive. So the moon landing program ended with Apollo 17 on December of 1972. After which, NASA had to find a way to justify its own existence, both as a scientific institution and as a tax-funded public entity. Focus shifted from moon landings to space shuttles, reusable, low-orbit spacecraft that would allow for cheaper missions and a quick, sustainable transport system that would open the doors for things like developing space stations and repairing satellites. Space Shuttle Columbia would make its maiden voyage on April 12, 1981. On August 27, 1984, President Ronald Reagan announced the Teacher in Space project, in which a public school teacher would be selected to become the first civilian to travel to outer space.
The teacher who will be going into space, Krista McAuliffe. Where's that you?
Krista McAuliffe was a New Hampshire social studies teacher and quickly became the face of this new project, the intersection of the space program and public interest. Throughout the Reagan administration, there was an incentive to use NASA and the space program as a means of promoting math and science education among the American youth. You saw it here with sending a teacher into space, and you saw it in things like the Young Astronaut program, a presidential initiative that created extracurricular school activities around space and space travel. With the sleek, iconic space shuttle and the Teacher in Space project, NASA and the space program was in the popular eye in a way it hadn't been since the moon landing over 15 years prior. Most of you know what happened next. On January 28, 1986, the Challenger launched, the 25th mission of the Space Shuttle program. 73 seconds into launch, the vehicle experienced structural failure and was destroyed, killing all 7 on board, including McAuliffe. For many people in this time, including children in classrooms, this tragedy was witnessed live on CNN. For many people, it became a cornerstone "where were you when it happened" moment of their lives. NASA grounded all space flights for 32 months as the tragedy was investigated and the program re-examined. The Teacher in Space program was officially shut down in 1990. Returning to shuttle flights didn't go smoothly for NASA, most notably in the launching of the Hubble Space Telescope in 1990, which didn't initially work as needed due to a flaw in one of the mirrors. It wouldn't be repaired until 1993. With the needed upkeep, the Hubble would be the most costly science operation in NASA history at $11.3 billion, adjusted for inflation. The full political and economical ramifications of these events are beyond the scope of this video, so let's narrow things a bit on NASA and the entertainment industry. NASA had dabbled in television before. In 1972, they co-founded the Appalachian Educational Satellite Project, designed to transmit educational material to schools and universities. In 1980, the project became privatized and spun off from NASA, becoming the Learning Channel, aka TLC, aka the Sister Wives and Dr. Pimple Popper Channel. Who wants this? NASA took the broadcasting foundation they had built up from the project and in 1980 created NASA Select, a satellite television feed so that officials, managers, and engineers could get real-time video of space shuttle operations. While members of the general public could watch NASA Select on their TV if they just happened to have the right equipment and lived in the right areas, it was never meant to be an actual commercial television channel. However, in 1991, NASA Select introduced actual shows on the feed, including a daily newscast and educational programs suitable for classroom use. What we found was that we had the equipment in place, the people in place, we were paying for the satellite transponder 24 hours a day, and we had a lot of dead airtime. We wanted to make use of the system. In the fall 1991 issue of NASA Magazine, it asks readers to call their local cable company and request they make NASA Select into a real cable channel. A few did, but not many. Did Launchbox ever air on NASA Select? Hard to say, since it wasn't quite an official television channel, and therefore rarely got television listings. Launchbox was very much part of this early 90s effort to turn NASA into what today we would call a content creator. Launchbox is a fun little show that shows off the cool things NASA can do on a business model that gets it to hundreds of classrooms across the country. Except something went wrong, and the show we got wasn't quite the show that was intended. When first announced in March of 1991, Launchbox was sold as a 14-episode weekly series, the first episode premiering on May 9th, coinciding with the dedication of the Space Mirror Memorial at the John F. Kennedy Space Center, with the series kicking off as a whole in September. By May, it was being advertised as a monthly series, not a weekly series. By September, everything was out the window. Only 9 episodes would be produced, and it took them years to make that much. So why wasn't Launchbox able to complete its episode order? And why did it take so long to produce the episodes we did get? Well, I don't have a concrete answer, but let's put on our detective hats and see if we can come up with a likely theory. Consider the show's third partner. The Astronauts Memorial Foundation was founded by Orange and Brevard County organizers shortly after the Challenger disaster, a private sector initiative to create a proper memorial for those who lost their lives in the pursuit of space exploration. The Space Mirror Memorial would end up costing $6.2 million, and they'd have to raise that money themselves, doing things like selling Challenger tribute license plates. One source of revenue came in the form of NASA-themed trading cards called Space Shots. The cards were published by Space Ventures Incorporated, a company owned by Edward White III, son of Edward White II, the first American to walk into space, and one of the astronauts who died in the Apollo 1 launch pad fire on January 27, 1967. Hoping to tap into the trading card bubble that had been growing throughout the 1980s, White used his family connections to contact several retired astronauts and acquire the exclusive rights to use their pictures on trading cards. The stated intent was for 1/4 of the profits from Space Shots to go to the Astronaut Memorial Foundation in exchange for a $160,000 loan for the company. There was also a trivia challenge where 100 people could win a $1,500 scholarship. By all accounts, this didn't happen, and the more you look into it, the more sketchy it seems. Ben Everidge, who was the president of the foundation at the time, became a consultant for Space Ventures and directly profited from card sales. David Walsh, the foundation treasurer, was a senior vice president of Sunbank, who approved the loan to Space Ventures. Ed White III ended up on the foundation's board of directors. Space Shots would result in $400,000 in royalties for the foundation, and there's no sign of the scholarships ever going out. The Space Mirror Memorial itself was pretty shoddy when it opened up. Granite panels with fallen astronaut names on them began to crack right away. Sections of the walkway became discolored by grout. Then in August of 1991, the entire memorial was declared a safety hazard and closed to visitors for 2 weeks. Repairs were costly. The state of Florida soon kicked off an investigation, which led to a full-blown audit of the company that stretched to at least 1994. Turns out the profits of those Challenger license plates were supposed to go to a Department of Education trust fund, which the Astronaut Memorial Foundation failed to file. A required $2 million maintenance fund for the memorial was not being kept. Where was that money going? There's a lot of stuff here unsaid, a lot of stuff unreported, and I can only connect so many dots. But it's probably worth mentioning that certain astronauts, like James Lovell and Gene Cernan, refused to sign any Space Shots cards when doing autographs. Take from that what you will. Now, I do not know how much influence the Astronauts Memorial Foundation had over Launchbox. I just know that the foundation, 1/3 of the organizations behind this show, mismanaged a lot of money in ways that make you scratch your chin and wonder if maybe there's some laundering going on. And the show in turn would have fewer episodes than promised, released less consistently than promised. There could be many other reasons for Launchbox ending up as it did, and since it's a fairly obscure, mostly lost, very underseen program, there's little incentive for anyone to set the record straight. I am but an amateur historian in these things. I can make inferences, but sometimes concrete connections will elude me. Launchbox is interesting as a snapshot of a space program that was still getting back on its feet, of a look at the weird little side projects Nickelodeon Studios got up to keep up with its Film Something Everyday contract with Universal. As a show, Launchbox is very inconsistent, with tones and production values varying wildly from episode to episode. One day, it's a silly Star Trek parody. The next, it's straightforward NASA interviews. And then the next, it's Phil Moore mugging in front of a blue screen. Of course, if you were a total space junkie as a kid, a lot of that can be forgiven because planets and rockets and spacesuits are really, really cool. And most kids didn't watch it when it was airing, they watched it in the classroom. And every time the teacher would roll out the TV and the VCR, It always felt a little bit special. Welcome to 1991, everybody. We're in for a hell of a ride.
Nick, 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 Nickelodeon. Nick, 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 Nickelodeon.
Next time, Nickelodeon takes another stab at the music video show. This show's even more lost than Launchbox. A huge thank you to Greg for sourcing me some of these episodes. That's a different Greg, I'm not thanking myself. Today's research shout out goes to NASA and the Space Industry by Joan Lisa Bromberg. While not about Launchbox directly, this 1999 book puts the relationship between NASA and commercial business in sharp relief. If you like to support Knacks and other Pop Arena projects, consider contributing to my Patreon. Every dollar goes to production values, research materials, and glasses. Been burning through a lot of eyewear lately. Don't forget, if we get the Patreon up to $1,000 a video, I'll start Knacks at night. You can also support the channel by liking the video, subscribing, hitting that bell icon for notifications, following me on social medias, sending a one-time donation through PayPal or Coffee, and sharing Knacks with all your friends. Thank you for watching, and remember, Black Lives Matter.